NCRP Productions presents the Fireside Chat Series. Hey, this is Barry, and welcome back to the Fireside Chat Series. I'm here today with Ty. We're going to talk about, well, I would say the upcoming, but it's already started, the Fallout series that we've finally gotten out for NCRP Productions. Ty, go ahead and say hello to the folks out there.
Hey, Barry. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm Ty. I'm the GM for the Fallout Beyond the Radwood Vale series, and happy to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to talk about this. We can start with, you've run a couple of games for us so far. I think I remember you did Fading Suns.
Yeah, the only game I've done for the podcast was Fading Suns, and that was, I think, 2 years ago.
It was a while ago.
2-3 years ago.
And I feel like you've done more, so your aura has reigned big over NCRP Productions.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So, why Fallout?
Oh boy.
I mean, where did you start with Fallout? Let's do that.
Yeah,
let's go back to the beginning.
That's a more narrow question. I appreciate it. Where did I start with Fallout? Well, my first experience with Fallout was Fallout 3. Like a lot of people, it was at my cousin's house in middle school.
Okay.
And I was blown away by the game at the time. Fallout 3, as a lot of people listening will probably attest to, was pretty influential. I loved it. We had a blast playing it. We play it, my brother and I, a ton. New Vegas, Fallout 4, all that. And then probably few years before Fallout 4 came out, I bought Fallout 1 and 2 on, it was back in the day.
Right.
When you bought games on discs before
back in my time.
Right, exactly. So I bought Fallout 1 and 2 from GameStop, used, I remember that. And I put them onto my laptop and played through those when I was probably late high school. And at the time, the Fallout 1 and 2 games were, let's just say, unforgiving. I've actually, within the past 3 years, have gone back and replayed through both, and I appreciate them now with a more mature eye.
Okay. All right. What didn't you like specifically then? What was unforgiving about them?
Well, Fallout 1 is just a different era of video games. It's not...
Pre-millennium.
Yeah. It's very old-fashioned in its kind of adventure game roots. There's no hand-holding. There's no quest markers. You have to be very thorough with where you click on the pixels to find everything you need to interact with. You need to make sure you talk to every single person.
Yeah, that's something we talked about in the Fallout game, and I don't think the listeners are going to get to hear it, but I've played Fallout 1 for a little bit, and at one point you go into the town, I think it's the first town, and you need a rope to get into something.
Correct.
And I didn't have it. And I'm like, well, crap. And I go look online real quick, and they're like, oh, yeah, you have to go to this other town to get it. And then you told me...
So the first town of Fallout 1 is Shady Sands, capital NCR, future capital. And recently with replaying it, when I played it back in high school, I don't remember gosh darn thing about it. But recently when I played it, I was just go up to every person and talk. And the first guard you talk to at the first town has rope on him.
Wouldn't that be awesome if I had done that?
Right.
Well, so let me ask you this. You said you started with Fallout 3, and to be honest, I've only played Fallout 1 really for any length of time. I don't enjoy the first-person shooter as much. I get some of that motion sickness thing, but you started, and 3 was a first-person shooter, so how was it going the other way? So for me, it was moving from the, three-quarter screen, you're on the thing, you're above the characters, to where you started first-person shooter and went backwards.
Yeah, so it was definitely hard. The stereotypical millennial brain was like, where's all the instant gratification and clicking? Where's the combat? Where's all this? It's turn-based. What? And I did beat them in high school. It just took a lot longer than it probably should have. A lot more IGN guides than I would like to admit. But recently, like I said, within the past few years when I replayed Fallout 1 and 2, coming at it with that more mature, methodical mindset, you really appreciate how well, for one, written and themed those original 2 games were. And I love them. They're so good.
Okay. So have you ever gone way, way, way back and tried out Wasteland, the parent?
So no, I've never tried Wasteland. The more modern sequel, Wasteland 2, I've played and beaten, and I really enjoyed that, but I've never gone back to the ancient texts.
Right, okay. Yeah, it was almost Zork.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so when you played it, you said you really got into it. This is long before really any other stuff. I mean, there's a little bit of paraphernalia, but there certainly weren't books or RPGs or board games or anything like that for Fallout when you were in it at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Did you I mean, your role playing roots go pretty far back. Were you thinking about Fallout as something you wanted to play? I see you smiling.
Yeah, so it's funny you should say that, because during the height of, I would say, my Fallout enjoyment was right when I was getting into RPGs, which was high school.
Okay.
And there was no Fallout RPG at the time.
We all know that.
However, there was and we weren't in the D&D, but we were in the Pathfinder.
Okay.
And there was a Pathfinder compatible supplement, and you probably know it's called Broken Earth.
Yep.
Well, I was like, this checks all my boxes. So I actually ran a campaign in high school using Broken Earth set in the Fallout universe.
Oh, wow.
So this isn't actually the first time I've ran Fallout. It's just with the Fallout system.
Like officially Fallout.
Correct. I used the Broken Earth Pathfinder game to run Fallout because I was so wanting to play it back in high school.
Okay, so you come by it naturally for a long time now.
In a way, yeah.
Okay. And did you, for that first couple of games, this is me because we've had this discussion off screen, did you start with them in a vault or did you start outside?
No, in that original Broken Earth, started outside. The vaults, not that I don't like the vaults, they're very integral to the setting and they're a great centerpiece. I like the idea of having characters who are more experienced in the setting.
Okay.
For more cinematic moments, that the classic eating the can of cram around the campfire kind of moment where everyone's, more grizzled and they know what they're doing. It's been,
a long time.
12 years since I ran it, so forgive my memory loss, but I think I know.
Welcome to my side of the world.
Exactly. I'm trying to remember. There's 3 players. I only remember 2. One was like this alchemist who is like, I remember would use like Nuka-Cola bottles to make like Molotov cocktails and stuff like that.
Okay.
And the other was this mechanic who was trying to fix up an old Corvega car, Corvega being the brand of cars in the Fallout universe. And I just really enjoyed that survivalist mentality, and there's no vaults in that campaign because I didn't really want to have the whole fish out of water story, which to me, vaults you take in one of 3 ways. Either they're a dungeon to be explored, they are a origin for a character to be kind of a fish out of water, or they are a horror novel of like some grotesque experiment.
Right, the psychology stuff.
Yeah, and those 3 things weren't exactly things I was looking to tell in that story, so no, I did not use them.
So I'll test your RPG history knowledge.
Oh.
Were you aware that for RPGs there were vaults before there was the Fallout game?
I was not aware of that. It doesn't surprise me. A lot of the universes and fictional universes I adore nowadays are just hot pots of other sci-fi settings melted together, and I assumed Fallout was no exception to this.
The absolute pinnacle, and I say that in the joke, but Hell on Earth does it more than anyone else, where they steal from every single piece of sci-fi genre to create their post-apocalypse. But the Morrow Project, which I think the original game came out in 79 or 80, introduced not vaults but cryotubes in a vault-like area, some kind of buried bunker. So it's fun for me because we played Morrow Project, and I remember those original, like Prime Base was module number 8, and I remember playing that for a really long time and enjoying the heck out of it. But let me move forward. So you moved out of the video games and the Fallout RPG comes out. And what do you think of Modiphius' game? I mean, it's in the 2D20 system. We've talked before. I know you knew the 2D20 prior to going into it. But what do you think of how they put the game together?
So I have mixed opinions on the Fallout RPG. I really enjoyed my time with it for this campaign. And there's a lot of that I like. There's quite a few things I do not like as well.
Okay.
And I'll be brief so I don't start rambling. I'll start with the things I like. I really enjoy, the 2D20 system is a very solid system, very simple, very fast. There's enough variance with multiple dice to where it's not feeling stagnant either, like a really cut down game system where you only get a handful of D6s can kind of start to get like, I don't know, pass, fail, yes, no kind of feel. So I appreciate it for that. I like how it handles combat. The combat system is very fluid and very fun. Survival aspects are great, and how loyally it carries over all the setting material to the RPG is impressive. However, other side of that same coin, it is so faithful to Fallout 4, basically,
Okay.
that it copies the entire game over. So one of the things I dislike about the RPG is how massive the equipment section of the book is. Now, I'm not saying I want a equipment section that is 1 page long and there's a sword, axe, broadsword, and that's it, or anything like that. I want a diversity of equipment. I like having a lot of weapons. What I have problem with is that every single weapon in the game has mods, and these weapons can have anywhere from 2 to 16 mods, and so everything has to be listed. And then you get into all the different armor in the game, and every armor has mod. And it's not just armor. It's not just like, for example, to draw it to a D&D parallel, it's not leather, scale mail, full plate. You have every individual piece of armor. So you have leather leg, chest, leather leg, arm, leather, arm or whatever.
Gotcha. Okay.
And every single one of those can be modded, which is, in a video game, easier because it's all handled digitally. In this, it's all has to be handled, tracked on a piece of paper. And when you're trying to find things in that book, it's just, luckily it has a little ribbon to keep track of, but multiple times when I was running, I was like, oh man, what's the stats on the rocket launcher? Mm-hmm. I went through them like, rocket launcher, oh, there it is. Oh, never mind. This is the mods for the rocket launcher. This is not where the stats for the rocket launcher are. So I have to find somewhere else in the book. Okay, cool. Here's the stats for the rocket launcher. All right, cool. Well, is my weapon like the qualities that this has nearby? Nope, that's in a whole nother section of the book. Okay, what about the ammo? Well, it's not in either of those 3. So I have to go to another section to find the ammo. So it's a very cumbersome gear management system. So that's my number one criticism is I do not like how it handles all the crafting elements of Fallout 4.
And to be clear, when you're talking about having all those mods and everything, you're not talking about the video game. You're talking about the role-playing game doing it, but emulating the video game, which already has it.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
Fallout 4 took the crafting element of Fallout to an extreme. And I'm not saying Fallout 4 was wrong in doing that. It's very cool. Video game's very fun.
I know people that are building their bunkers still. They've been building it since they bought the game.
Right.
So I get it.
It's just that mechanic I personally do not think carries over well to an RPG setting. My second criticism of the RPG, it's not that big of a deal. I do not like how it creates your character origins. How the game is formatted is you can play as a Mr. Handy, a super mutant, a ghoul, a Brotherhood Initiate, and a survivor. And so when you look at that as a group of players looking at it, you're like, oh, I want to play the super mutant, I want to play the Mr. Handy, I want to play the ghoul, I want to play the survivor, and I'll play the Brotherhood Initiate.
Sure, the Star Trek bridge crew.
Yeah, you get you get a D&D adventure party, which to me, that is not, Fallout has a host of companions that will eventually join you. However, the idea of that, like, this is my motley group of heroes going on an adventure doesn't really sit well with me in a Fallout setting. Like, a super mutant being part of the team is a big deal. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it has to be handled with a certain level of gravitas. And how the RPG is formatted is like, oh, that's, in every town there's 20% of them are super mutants, 20% of them are ghouls, and 20% are Mr. Handies, and they're all just living, coexisting in a utopian society.
Right.
And the fact that
it's not.
Right. And the fact that the survivor is just one of these is, I think, disappointing, because the survivor by far is the most diverse. The survivor alone, any other idea or trope you have of a human in the post-apocalypse just awkwardly falls into that survivor category. And I don't like how it's all, granted, with survivor, you pick certain traits to try to diversify it, but no player looking at it is like, hey, all 5 of us want to play survivors? Like, no one's going to do that.
But that would be more realistic to what you would expect in a Fallout game.
Correct. Yes. I like the idea of, maybe, 2 of a group of 5 being what I call weird origins, which are like the Mr. Handies, the ghouls, the super mutants, and a majority of the party being humans, which luckily for us is what happened with our adventure. We had the 1 ghoul and we had 3 normal humans.
Right.
Which, I appreciated.
Okay. So you decided you were going to run it for us. Tell me about, how did you come up with the setting? How long have you been working on it? Here's what I'm going to tell you. The 4 players were blown away with the story, in the sense that you had a great handle on what was going here, what was going here, what was going here, and we all trusted that if we went somewhere else, you know what was going to be there. And it was surprising because I know you're in a whole bunch of other games, not just role-playing games, but war games and all this stuff. How much of an extensive build have you done on the area beyond the Radwood Vale?
I appreciate that. So the idea of running a Fallout RPG in like the Humboldt Lost Coast region has been bouncing around in my brain for, I don't know. I mean, basically since I ran a Broken Earth back in high school, that was set in Humboldt.
All right, so a while now.
A while. I originally used a map creator about 3 years ago and I used a Google, I overlaid a screenshot of Google Earth of Humboldt and like created a pseudo map.
Oh, wow.
And I kind of, started filling it in with things. I still have that old map. A lot of it is not what I want nowadays.
Sure.
Like, I'm like, I don't like that anymore kind of thing. But it was still there as a framework as far as Humboldt goes. There's certain themes I wanted to have in the setting. My favorite Fallout game is New Vegas. And the West Coast is a wonderfully written setting because the West Coast is based on Fallout 1, 2, and New Vegas. All the Bethesda products are all East Coast bound.
I've understood that, yeah.
And I personally think that the setting of the West Coast is more interesting. You get larger nation states, there's more variety, there's not as clear of a moral compass as you get with some of the Bethesda games, like, oh, they're the good guys or they're the bad guys kind of thing. And so I was drawn to that, and part of that is trying to respect that source material. And the closest we ever get to Humboldt in Fallout is in Fallout 2, where you start up in southern Oregon, and you come down to Redding, and then you go east to Reno.
Okay, so 3 hours by car from here.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And there's very little to glean, right? It's kind of just this mysterious area that nothing really ever talks about. There is a mod for a video game I play called Old World Blues. It's for a video game called Hearts of Iron, and in it is a war game set in the Fallout universe. It's a mod for a game, and the NCR is portrayed in that, and as well as Humboldt County. And I originally got the idea from that mod to do a unknown land that would soon be annexed by the NCR's growing regime.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was drawn to this idea of where I can take a lot of different tropes and combine them into one setting. So the idea of, the American frontier, where the prospectors come in, then the railroad, then the settlements, and civilization is brought. That's the theme a lot with the NCR, is they're a very expansionistic government. And so I was like, okay, it would be very cool. I could set it somewhere I'm familiar with, set it home and have this really untapped area that I could do what I want with, and then eventually have a really cool narrative of, the NCR coming in to exert its dominance, and how do the players interact with this. The NCR, one of the things I love about it is it's not a good guy. It's not a bad guy either. It's just a force.
Okay.
And there's a lot of really great moral questions that can be asked with the NCR, and New Vegas does it really well. And so to combine this mysterious land that is shrouded in fog, and you and I being from Humboldt, we know that is one of the most distinctive features about this land.
Without a doubt.
Is the fog. Well, why don't we use that as a element of mystery to the land? And to help paint within the lines of this picture, I had the idea of let's start doing small vignettes across the Lost Coast to kind of fill us in on what's it like, and then eventually one day have that grand introduction of what happens when the world finally finds the Lost Coast.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, so to the episodes themselves, do you feel like we explored what you wanted to explore, or do you think there's more coming? I mean, we're not completely done on our releases, but when they're finished, is there a chance we're going to see more?
So as far as what the show covered, I was very happy with what it covered. It portrayed the culture of the settlement that I created, I think, very faithfully to what I had in my head. That is obviously not the extent of the culture in the Lost Coast. It's a very diverse area in my head. And there's definitely more I would like to show and draw and,
So we could possibly expect to see a few more, or maybe a bunch more, vignettes, small stories beyond the Radwood Vale.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anything else that I've missed? Anything else you want to warn anyone about? Let them know as far as the Fallout game and what we're doing with it?
I would like to elaborate a little more on those who are not familiar with Humble area or anything like that as far as the show goes. Kind of explain a few things.
Sure, I'd love to hear it.
So the adventure, and I'm not going to spoil anything.
Please don't. I think everyone's going to enjoy going through it as it comes up.
2 towns. There's a bridge in between Rio Dell and Scotia.
Oh, good. I was hoping that you were going to cover this. Okay, good. I didn't want to throw you under the bus and say you're going to tell us this. You were going to have to say nope.
No. It's between Rio Dell and Scotia. It's a green, I don't know what you call it, lattice work bridge kind of thing. It's not cable or suspension or anything like that. And I grew up a lot in Rio Dell, and I grew up a lot in Scotia. I had 2 friends growing up who went to both, lived in both those towns. So I'm very familiar with the area. My family has worked at that mill for 3 generations. So I'm very familiar with that whole area and that culture. And what's fascinating is these 2 towns, towns, Scotia and Rio Dell, sit right next to each other, like opposite, like you could throw a stone across the bridge at each other. Yet they're very distinct.
Well, historically, the distinction is Scotia was a mill town.
Right.
You lived there, you worked for the mill, they gave you a house, etc., etc. As soon as somebody in the household, let me say it a different way. As soon as nobody in the household was working at the mill in Scotia, you had to leave. But you still had your entire family, your life, your friends, your kids' friends, your potentially other family members, like your brother might be there. So they all moved across the bridge to Rio Dell. Rio Dell is not by any means the rejects, but it is the people who left Scotia. So very different.
Also, fun trivia, Scotia, since it was a company town, the company didn't allow for bars. So there's no bars in Scotia.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that.
There's a bar in Rio Dell. So one of the things I carry across into the RPG is, there's the 2 families, right? There's the Scotswoods and the Dells, which is the Scotia people and the Rio Dell people.
Yeah, I love it. I love that when you did that.
Well, in the RPG, the Scotswoods run the mill and the Dells run the bar.
I remember that.
Which is just a nod to the real history of those 2 towns. And then, and then I just sat there and I thought, well, you got a culture that spent 200 years living on a bridge. What's going to happen there? The veneration of the river is kind of an obvious one. I liked, there's always in a lot of religions the crossing to the afterlife. So
that was a wonderful thing. We all loved that.
Yeah. So those were really fun. That is my favorite part about game mastering is setting creation. And so I loved coming up with how does the economy of this town work? What is their culture like? What would they worship? What do their homes look like? What do they wear? That's the fun part for me. And as expanding out a little bit, you guys go south a little bit. The rail line is a constant staple in the show, and that's very important to Humboldt. Humboldt's a very mountainous region.
It is.
With basically one way north or south, which is Highway 101. And everything is off on spurs off of that.
Right.
But if you want to go anywhere in Humboldt, it's the 101 north to south. The rail line parallels that for most of the highway until you get just a little bit north of Garberville, and then it splits off. And so in tying that in to having you guys follow it was important for me.
All right. Anything else? I love that you brought it up. I was there will be some other things that come up that you're going to have to do the work, the sleuthing work on your own to figure out where Ty figured out to bring it in. But overall, I think that's a great introduction, getting us the 2 towns component, because I thought it was so clever. I really did. And a couple of the players and I have talked away from you, and it just really enjoyed that part of it.
I appreciate that a lot. Thank you, Barry.
Well, good. I'm hoping that everyone is excited, at least as much as we are with the Fallout coming out. I'm super excited. I tell you this, I bug Ty all the time when are we going to do the next one. But while we're thinking about Fallout, we do have a couple things. Right now, we have Torg running concurrent with Fallout. We also have the second half of the Star Wars season 2 coming. And Ty, of course, you're in that one. You're Victus. We are going to have Root, and then, as we've said, hopefully another Fallout. maybe Two Towns 2, maybe something else.
If I were to do more Fallout,
Look, see, I talked it out.
I know. It's hard. It's hard not to get excited about a setting.
Oh, we all are. So yeah, spill it. You're gonna hear it here first.
If I were to be doing another one, it would probably take place not at Two Towns.
Okay.
I want to use this opportunity to flush out the different parts of the Lost Coast and Humboldt, and I don't want to get too stuck in one place.
Sure.
I feel like Two Towns was very well shown, and we understand it, and we can relate to it. Let's go somewhere else next.
I love it. Well, Ty, thank you for joining me today. I cannot wait to see what comes out next.
I appreciate it, Barry. Thank you for having me.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for joining us on another NCRP Productions podcast. We couldn't do this without you, so please like and subscribe everywhere we're found, including YouTube, Facebook, Anchor, Google, Apple, Spotify, and other great podcast sites. If you'd like to help us continue making more content, we'd love to have your support on our Patreon. And if you have any feedback for us, please feel free to comment on our podcasts or email us directly at ncrpproductions@gmail.com. And we'd like to give a special shout out to our current patrons, our Seegson Employees of the Month, Michael H., Michael P., and our Breaker of Seals, Frank H., Christopher C., Matthew K. Thank you all. We truly, truly appreciate it.